Can you all hear me?
Yes.
I had this or the option of the headpiece, and I was like, let's just go old school and less likely to mess that up. So, in case you don't know me, my name is Krista Summercorn. I live here in Twin. And so my story involves paganism. So it started off was looking back my first real ritual that I had gone to, because they did a blessing. There was food involved. It was a first pagan ritual, and I went into it completely naive, just thinking, it's a Halloween party for adults. This is going to be great fun. And I blinked, and all of a sudden I was in a coven, and I breathed in and out, and then all of a sudden I was in a heathen kindred, and that was 22 years ago. And I just never knew any different for my whole entire adult life, and I always felt like there was something missing, wasn't quite what I wanted, and I kept searching. Sorry, it's picking up my hand. But yeah, I was always searching for that next spell, that more magic, more power, something to give me that rush that I had at the beginning. And now looking back, it was an addiction. I was addicted to paganism. And it turns out it's easy and it's hard to break. It's easy in that you just say the sinner's prayer and you accept Jesus into your heart and it's done. But it's hard because that was 2 decades of my life. I mean, it was a way of life for me. It was how I thought. It was how I spoke. It was how I dressed. And so I'm having to rethink everything I do as an adult. I did have a moment where I could have accepted God into my heart, and I didn't. So I kind of want to tell you guys about that a little bit. I met my husband. He's also a pagan. We got married and then moved to his home state, Idaho. And as God would have it, this was the first place that offered me a job. So that's how we ended up in Twin. And the next year, I came down with GBS, which is where your body tries to eat itself. And so at one point, I was paralyzed from my neck down. And I was in a hospital bed, and they were having to, rotate me to make sure I didn't get bed sores and all of this crazy shenanigans that you don't even think of till it happens to you. And one night, I remember thinking, I don't want to live like this. And so I was thinking to myself, all I have is my lungs, my heart, and my brain. That is literally all I can control in my life right now. What if I choose to not breathe? And so I inhaled and I exhaled, and I just willed my body not to inhale again. I was just going to off myself. And between one heartbeat and the next, I remember my eyes were closed, and I don't remember if I opened them or not, but it was like a black void. There was nothing. There was no sound. There was no light. And all of a sudden I heard this deep, resonant, booming voice say, "Live or die, choose." It's like, come again? And they're like, "Live or die, choose." I'll admit, I'm a bit of a chicken. At that moment, I was like, I think this was a bad mistake. I don't really want to die. So I said, fine, I live. And this voice said, "Done. Live and remember." And again, remember, I am paralyzed from my neck down. Nothing works. I swear to you, I am standing in church. This is the God's truth. I sat up with an inhaled gasp and started breathing again. And then I looked around and I'm like, I am sitting in a hospital bed. Sitting. Ab muscles are working. And the next day, I could feel my feet. And the following day, I could feel my kneecaps. And it just kept going upwards until I am as you see me now. And all the doctors were just shocked because they've never seen a recovery as fast or as well as mine. And of course, me being me, I didn't attest it to being God's will. I was like, I'm just that good. Obviously, I willed my body to get better. It's like, no. So apparently that was not enough. And so God got back on his think tank and thought again of how to reel me back in. And that was when 2 years ago, a miracle happened. So just to let you guys all know, at the time I was 38 years old and I suffer from PCOS, which means I have the terrible infertility, right? I became pregnant. And I gave birth to my absolutely beautiful, mischievous, amazing daughter, Astrid. And she just exploded onto my life, and that was when I figured out it truly does take a village to raise a child. And then I got to looking around, and I'm like, I don't have a village. Where do I get a village? And so I looked at the covens, because, I'm heathen, maybe the Wiccans might take me in. No. If you're not willing to swear into their covens and jump through all of these hoops and all of these obstacles, they don't want you to just show up and kind of worship with them. They want you to be full on in there with them moving. I'm like, well, okay, I'll find someone else. Well, the nearest kindred is up in Boise, which is 3 hours away. What am I supposed to do? Go there once a month? I need people here that I can call up and be like, let's do a play date. I could call up and say, let's do a mom date, actually be in my child's life to help me raise this youngling. And then my great-grandmother happened because I was talking and just bemoaning the fact that I had no village and I had no idea where to get one. And all of a sudden, my dearly departed, very, very religious grandmother popped into my dreams one night. And she sat down next to my bed and grabbed my hand and kind of patted it like she always would do. And in her very deep Southern accent, said, "Y'all need Jesus." I'm like, okay. But I'm like, what does she know? She's dead. We'll try something else. Literally the next day, I was talking to my best friend Amanda about what am I going to do about Astrid, and she's like, well, have you tried church? Obviously, someone's trying to tell me something. So I started going, and it was incredible, and it was awful. Not gonna lie. I walk in, and everyone's like lovey-dovey, and nobody has a clue who I am. Like, I just show up, and I'm like, am I supposed to hug? Am I supposed to shake? Like, are we kissing? What are we doing here, people? And of course, Astrid is just loving it, because she looks and she's like, people, oh my gosh, it's so exciting. Just like beside herself. She gets to wear pretty dresses. She's got on pretty shoes. Anybody that knows my Astrid knows that that's just, if she could rock a little mini purse, it would happen. They don't make those that small, though. But yeah, it took a while to get into it. And I'm going a little bit off script, but I feel led to tell you a little bit more of the story I've shared with the women at Women's Breakfast. Is truly the first sign was Pastor Allie's singing, and Angie, your ministry with my daughter. Because literally the first time I came to church, off whisks my daughter. Like, she just vanishes. One second she's there, the next second she's in your arms, you're going down the stairs. So I'm like, my daughter just got kidnapped. Like, is this a hostage negotiation? Like, what's happening here? But I'm like, we're just gonna roll with it. I could deal with this. And so I survived my first time at church in 20 years. And I just want to point out to anybody watching this or anybody here, this is no insult against Pastor Allie, who I believe has the voice of some sort of like holy angel. It is beautiful. But the first time I heard it, you were warbling like some off-key parrot. It was awful. I couldn't figure out the rhythm. I had no idea where these words were coming from. Took me 5 minutes to realize people were staring at a screen that told them where the words were. Because I'm just looking around like, where are these people? Why do they know all these songs? I forgot about overhead screens and whatnot. And then, you preached, Pastor Jake. Didn't make a lick of sense. Like, it was like that speaker in the Peanuts movie. Where it's just like, womp, 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 womp. I'm like, okay, all right. It's for Astrid. This is for Astrid. And so as soon as church was done, man, I licked down that stair like there were flames out of me, and I was just going to grab my baby and get the heck out of Dodge, right? Just get out of there. I'm like, this is obviously not for me. But I go down there, and I literally lurched to a stop. I was moving so fast. I was running, and I just went like, and just stared, because there was my daughter who had not really smiled for a couple months, right? She was kind of lonely. And there she is giggling, not smiling, giggling with like the happy tears coming out, and her eyes like little squints because she was so happy, and she had this look of adoration looking at Angie, and I'm like, all right, we'll come back again next Sunday. And so we did, and we did that for a year, I think, pretty close to a year. And so I would come and I would sit at the very back and I would crochet or do something to ignore the words coming out of your mouth, and I would try to mouth along with the words coming out of your mouth and try to make sense of what was going on around me. And unbeknownst to me, it gradually started making sense. But I didn't catch on until finally, one day, you were talking, Pastor Jake, about, you have to confess your sins, and it was some phrase about, like no paganism, no witchcraft. And I was like, oh, I feel called out on that one. And so I talked to Pastor Jake. I'm like, I got something to confess. So I meet up with them after hours, and I tell them, I'm like, look, I got to tell you, I'm a pagan. I'm already pretty much toast, but, I want my daughter to be raised up well. So if you could just preach the word of God to her, I'll just sit at the back. I won't make any ruckus. I'll just be my little self, kind of contained over here. And, I won't jar your Christianity over here. And he just looked at me and he had this slight grin and he was just like, it's okay. You will always be welcome here. And I remember that, and I was so afraid because, the Bible says you're supposed to stone witches. Like, y'all going to go to the pavement and pick up some rocks? Like, am I going to die? What's happening here? And you just looked at me and you're just like, you will always be welcome here. And that was, you didn't know it, and I had no clue, but that was one of the first steps. Was truly feeling welcome somewhere where I didn't expect it. And then it just got even better. And then eventually it got to a point where one day, about a month ago, I was sitting there and I realized, oh, I know the words of this song. And I can hear your voice and you sound amazing. And then you were talking and my mind was blown because all of a sudden I can understand the words coming out of his mouth. And I'm just like, this is awesome. How do I know more? And I asked you and you're just like, well, have you read the Bible? Let me get back to you on that one. And so then I became, I was baptized and delivered, and now I'm here talking. And this wasn't the way my speech was supposed to go, but that's the way it goes. I wanted to talk a little bit, so that's my testimony, I guess. If you want to skip the preachy part, you could just skip past this next section. I thought about talking about the differences between pagans and Christians, but then I thought I'm going to inevitably skew it towards Christianity and how we're better than them. But that's the wrong message. We don't want to get into egotism like that. And then I thought, well, I should just tell you how to love a pagan because that's how it worked for me. And they're like, but what if you come up against someone who doesn't understand love? Then what do you do? So then I scrapped that speech, and this is now the third one. So I am now going to tell you what you did right. Because I figure I can't prepare you for what you're up against. I can just remind you of what you did that worked the first time. And the first one that came to mind is Catherine. I think her name's Catherine. Yeah. The first time I ever stepped foot in this church, she was there, as tall as me, which is amazing because I'm kind of tall. And I'm looking eye to eye with this woman, and she smiles at me. And it's not just one of those like she literally means it. It was a smile from her heart. And she just looked at me and she's like, you look like you need a hug. I'm like, huh? And then she comes over and she just envelops me in this awesome hug. And in that second, I felt God. I didn't know it at the time. But at that time, I was so out of sync with God's love that it was only through physical touch that I could feel it. So Catherine would hug me, and then Pastor Annette, you would hug me, and then Cindy, you would hug me, and then Rita, you would hug me, and then everybody would hug me. And it was like I was getting my little church service in like microsecond bits, getting little segments of it. And so this is where I start. So if you could bring up Romans 16:16. Greet one another with a holy kiss. All of the churches of Christ greet you. This is what you're supposed to do. This blows my mind. Not that I want you guys all to kiss me. I'm interpreting that as a holy hug, a embrace of some sort. But this is how we're called to basically say hi, is to say, hey, you are awesome. I want to reach out and embrace you. And the thing that got me was, like in my family, we hug, right? We hug, we kiss on the cheek, it's fine. We do it when we haven't seen each other for like a year. We now do it every Sunday. Like I come in and I've seen you guys like 3 days ago and people hug me. It's amazing. So just do more of that, and greet one another like you haven't seen each other in years, even though it's been like a couple days. Because that's how you get the ball rolling, Okay, next is Philippians 4:8, if you would. Okay, so this is a long one. It says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. And y'all, you do this. And I got a story for you about that. So, I walked further into the church, my first time being here, right? And what do I see? Rita in some sort of floral, amazing outfit. And Linda in something with pastels, right? This shocked me. Why did it shock me? Pagans don't wear pastels. They wear red, they wear black, they wear dark colors, dark colors. And they never wear pastels. They don't wear florals, they don't wear plaids, they don't wear any of these nice colors because, they don't want to get mistaken for going to church. And I had forgotten that until I walk in and I am just stunned at the colors before me. And I see, Rita and Linda and Licia, you blew my mind. Because I got to tell you, I hadn't seen a woman wear high heels in about 20 years. Because pagans usually have their rituals outside. You never wear high heels in dirt. That's just a bad idea. But you are firm on where you stand, and you can wear high heels. And you looked like you were ready for the fanciest restaurant in town. And I was just thinking, that's how we should be. Because we are here on a date. We're here to get to know God just a little bit better. Which is also why I'm dressed so nice, because that and it's being recorded. So, yeah. So, yeah, and then the surprise just is, they just keep coming. So if you can cue Colossians 2. Yeah, so the main thing to bring out of this is the don't handle, don't taste, don't touch. Why are you following these rules? Such rules are mere human teachings about things that deteriorate. Okay? Now you think about that and you're like, where on earth is she going with this? I have a story. After I got baptized on my birthday, which was amazing, my husband was like, I want to give you a birthday gift on your birthday. He's like, if I bought you a cross, would you wear it? And I was just thinking, if my pagan husband buys me a cross, you can bet I will wear it. I will wear it with pride. And so I was going around church and I was so excited. I was showing it off to everybody. And it wasn't until I showed it off to Pastor Annette that I realized I was showing it off wrong. Now, I will show you. If you grab it by the chain and hold it up by the cross, otherwise, in pagan terms, this would be called a token. It's so that you don't touch it. Because pagans believe that in order to get magic out of it, you have to put magic into it. And so you can imagine I was aghast and like horrified when I held it up like this and I showed Pastor Anna. I'm like, look at my cross. And she immediately reaches out and caresses it. And I was like, you're not supposed to touch it. And then I got to thinking, I'm like, no, you should touch it. Handle it. Caress it. Say how awesome it is, because you should not be afraid to touch things. Because in the pagan world, they are. Because they believe that if you put magic into it, say Cindy has a beautiful necklace on, right? And she's put so much effort into it, and she's so proud of it. And I go over and say, oh, what a pretty necklace, and I handle it. Technically, I could steal that effort that she put into her necklace. Isn't that a scary thought? But I lived with those kind of thoughts for 20 years. But you don't have to anymore, because God tells us specifically, no, handle it, touch it, eat it, do what you need to with it, because I am here, right? Oh, all right. Next one is a two-parter. There's 2 verses. Jesus wept. Now, I'm not sure why, but when I was pagan, there were 2 verses that I had memorized. That was it. I knew, let me see. Don't help me. There's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in the New Testament. And then there's Jesus wept. And then there's the and be not conformed to this world. That's it. That was the existence of my Bible teachings when I was 18, which is just terrible. But what is my point of this? Jesus wept. It's the shortest sentence in the entire Bible, and it is also one of the most enlightening ones to my viewpoint. Why? Pagans don't cry. We are stoic individuals. Sorry. They are stoic individuals. Still working on that. But yeah, they're very stoic. They're very proud of being emotionless, being strong, being courageous Vikings. And they never cry. If you're crying like someone died, or someone's in the hospital, or you need consoling, it's never, oh, I wept with happy tears, or you shocked me, I'm going to cry because I'm just so excited I can't hold it in, right? But as Christians, we are called to be like Jesus. And even he wept. And so you can imagine, as a pagan turned Christian, I was a little put off the first time I saw a deliverance, and the woman started crying. And I was like, does she need help? Like, is she in pain? What do we need to do? And they're like, just keep your hands off of her. She is sobbing with relief. And I was just like, say what? What? What is going on here? I had no concept. Because my entire adult life, I had never seen a grown woman cry with relief until that moment. And then I'm in church, and I mean, we have Kleenexes on every pew bench. People are freely weeping and crying, and they just, yeah. I'm seeing how my notes, I've completely gone off my notes, but. All right, next one. So, God blesses you who are hungry now, for you will be satisfied. God blesses you who weep now, for in due time you will laugh. And I got to tell you, this church is full of weepers. So, the laughs have got to start coming soon, right? Okay. So, out of all of that, what is my final point? What am I calling you to do? Romans 12, 1. Did I miss one? No, there it is. So, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Which is also stated, this is the one that I had memorized. Was that the right one? Well, anyways, it's the do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed in all ways pleasing to God. That's what I would say to all of you if I could give you a piece of true advice, is stick out like a sore thumb. Wear pastels. Wear colors. Cry if you want to. Do all of these things because they mark you as Christians. And I'll go one step further. It's not in my notes, but it was what I was thinking of while we were singing. I encourage you all, and this is just a personal ask, stop saying thank God. Say praise God. Why? Pagans don't say praise, but sometimes they goof and say thank God. Because what pagans say sometimes is thank the gods, but they try to shorten that the so that people don't catch it. So they'll just say like, thank the gods, right? And so people think that they're part of society because they want to blend in. But if you start going around saying, oh, praise Jesus, it sets you apart like that, right? It marks you as being different, but it marks you in a good way. Nobody's going to say, well, that person just said praise Jesus, and I'm not sure I'm okay with that. They're not going to do that. So if I could say anything, it would be, don't give in to the ways of this world, and just remember your praises. But I would also encourage you, and this is a story time, Mark 8. So this one's kind of a long one. So it's a story, okay? You guys are probably more familiar with this than I am, but I found this to be absolutely amazing. So it's Mark chapter 8, verse 22 through 25. So it's a little bit long. When they arrived at Bethsaida, some people brought a blind man to Jesus, and they begged him to touch the man and heal him. Jesus took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the village. Then, spitting on the man's eyes, he laid his hands on him and asked, "Can you see anything now?" The man looked around. "Yes," he said, "I see people, but I can't see them very clearly. They look like trees walking around." Then Jesus placed his hands on the man's eyes again, and his eyes were open. His sight was completely restored, and he could see everything clearly. Now, I am not advocating spitting on people. But what I take from this lesson is Jesus did what he could with what he had. Right? Did he have water? No. If he had water, he probably would have blessed the water and used the water. He didn't have any, so he used his own saliva. He gave of himself to help his fellow man. And I think there's a lot that we could learn from that. We do what we can with what we have to aid our fellow man. So, yeah. Next one. But I will caution you, as 1 Timothy 5:22 says, do not be hasty in the laying on of hands, and do not share in the sins of others. Keep yourself pure. So it's all well and good to say you want to help, help the homeless, feed the poor, give meals to the poor, but don't make yourself poor to help them, like don't beggar yourself to help the beggars. Don't start going to Wiccan rituals so that you can help save the Wiccans. You have to keep yourself removed because you want to help them, but you also don't want to be tainted by what they do. And the last thing I would say, that there's one thing I would just love for us all to do, and it might be a little preachy of me, but at some point, when you all feel ready, get used to saying, I love you. But mean it. You can't just say empty words because people will know it right off the hand. So I would encourage you at some point tonight or maybe next Sunday, just turn to someone in church and just, hug them and say, I love you. Because, and here's the sad truth, if we can't love those in the church, how are we supposed to love others? Because we know each other here. We go to worship together, and if I can't say I love you, how am I supposed to say I love somebody else? So, with that, that's the end of my spiel. I would like to open it for any questions, if anybody has questions.
Mike, if you have a question.
Yeah, now's your chance. If you're wondering about anything, don't worry, I won't go into gruesome detail on anything. But if you want to know anything about how pagans are different from Christians, or more about how you can try to convert a pagan. Oh, yeah.
I think you...
I came prepared. I thought there would probably be a question like that. Let me find it. Okay. I've amassed a list. Okay, don't worry, I'm not going to read the whole thing. So these are signs that you guys can do in your spare time, and it will tell you just exactly how predominant paganism is in this area. And for anybody viewing elsewhere, it's the same kind of test. Number 1, does your liquor store sell mead? It is called honey wine. The only people that drink it are wine connoisseurs and heathens. So if your liquor store sells mead, someone's buying it. And if they're buying a lot of varieties, there's a lot of someone's buying it. In Laramie, where I was before we moved here, they sold 2 kinds. Chaucer's and the crappy one. I forget which one it was, but it was the bad one. Everybody always liked the Chaucer's because it had the brewing spices that would go along with it, so you could mull the wine and make it taste better. I've checked here in town. There's a liquor store, I think it's one of the warehouses over by, it's off of 5 Points and Jimmy John's. They sell 3 kinds of meat. And that's just one liquor store. Another one, does Hobby Lobby sell fur or leather? You think about that, who are the only people that will need fur or leather? Either pagans or bikers, or some random crafty people. But the random crafty people usually buy from Tandy Leather and get it shipped to them. If you have spot sales of fur and leather, someone's buying that in bulk from Hobby Lobby. Another one is there's an axe throwing shop here in town. That's for Viking wannabes. I can guarantee you, you go there on a Friday night, there's going to be at least one heathen probably there trying to throw an axe. You also have a crystal shop. That's for Wiccans. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Herbalist stores, the only ones that go there are naturalists, those with high allergies, and Wiccans, because they need it for their spellcraft. Here's another one that's going to blow your mind. Compare how many Christian stations there are on your radio to how many pop and heavy metal stations there are. Because heathens predominantly only listen to heavy metal, and Wiccans listen to either like bluesy, folksy kind of like jazzy type music, or they listen to modern pop. And that will be, yeah, those are signs. So, yeah.
So you're saying we have quite a few.
Oh, yes. I don't know why, like, I keep trying to get rid of them, but apparently I'm still attached to the Coven on Facebook. And so they're actually having an event September 30th to get ready for their witches ball on Halloween. And there's already 300 people that have liked the event in September. And there's almost over 500 people that liked the witches ball. So there's a heavy amount. But this is one of those, we are in a target-rich society.
I'm not sure how to phrase this, but do the covens around here pray against the good in the community? And pray is not the right word, but
Yeah, I know what you're saying. So just a little bit about how magic and Wiccanism works. There are generally 3 types of magic. There's white magic, gray magic, and black magic. Most witches or Wiccans will tell you that they're white practitioners, meaning that they only do magic for themselves or the good of society. I would say for every probably 10 or 20 white practitioners, you'll get a black who's out there like basically like a Satanist. They want all that they can get and they don't care who gets hurt in the process. Although that's actually not typically right, because Satanists like to say that they only do what they want and they can't harm other people. Satanists, what are you going to do? But yeah, I would say there's not a lot that are actively working against the town. But along those lines, which is a fabulous question, I was talking to Pastor Annette the other day. If you want something to pray for, pray that God stops the spirits from granting magic. Because to invoke a spell, you have to invoke elements, you have to invoke the deity, you have to basically ask a higher creature than yourself to grant you magic to do a spell. But it's all through air. So God is dominion over that. So if you ask God to stop all spells, they can do whatever they want. They can do as much magic as they want, but it's all going to be pointless because there's not going to be anything, there's not going to be a backing to it. There's not going to be any force to it. So they can set up as many spells and crystals and whatnot as they want, but if you pray that they're ineffectual, then it's not harming them, but they can't do harm to anybody else.
Okay, here's one. So, I've been a part of many different churches and that kind of stuff. And usually if somebody doesn't show up for a while, usually we try to go out and help them and see if they're having a tough time and helping them out. Are they going to come after you and say, hey, we haven't seen you around?
They already did. Yeah,
Maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so they were wondering where I was at. They're very, very proactive about that. They like to see it as taking care of one another, but it could be slightly stalkerish. Because it's like if you're not, there's only 8 holidays a year. So if you're not at one, sometimes they'll be like, hey, didn't see you at this Sumble. Are you like, what happened? Why weren't you there? And I kind of fell off the planet. I didn't talk to any of my kindred members for like 2 years, and then I called them up like last month and told them I was turning Christian. So they were actually really amazing about it, though. Like, I thought they were going to be all sorts of angry and weird, but they had 2 questions for me. And the first one was, have you found peace? And I said, yes, I have finally found the peace that I was looking for. And then they said, question number 2, are you still going to stay our friend? And I said, sure. And they're like, then we release you. You don't have to be in our kindred anymore. It's like, well, that was quick and painless. Yeah, so, yeah. Does anybody have any other questions? Yeah.
So kind of back to that question I had about, them
Sure.
doing what they do over the community. Do they actually target people?
Sometimes.
I wondered about that.
Yeah. If there's someone who's actively working against them, they will probably try to bind that person. So there's a chance that if they see this video, which I'm going to put on my Facebook so I can let all my family watch it, there's a possibility they might try to come after me, but I believe that God is far stronger.
Is way bigger, yes.
So I'm not worried.
Okay.
Amen.
So, okay, well, if nobody has any other questions, I will turn it over to prayer time. But if you have any questions, just remember you can ask me anything. Some answers I will not give you just because, as I found out, you don't always have to know everything. Some knowledge is better off not known. So feel safe knowing that you can ask me whatever, and I will judge whether or not I'm going to give you the answer.